So, although the Roman Empire had been united under Constantine, really covering a lot of what is white on this map, um, and although a good chunk of it had been reunited in what we saw in the last lecture under Justinian, really the East and West come to be pretty split. And they are that way more or less from the 3 or 400s on. And the disintegration of the West that just is not as successful as what's going on in Byzantium really starts around the late 100s, around Rome's northern borders, which you can kind of see on this map are two rivers. The Rhine River in kind of Central and Western Europe, and the Danube River that is more kind of, I guess, Central and Eastern. And anybody that was beyond that border was considered by the Romans to be Germans, right? It's kind of like a catch-all phrase for them. But there's tons of different tribes, tons of different language, tons of different customs. Up until the 300s, these Germans are pretty well held in check and pushed beyond the borders by the Romans. But starting in the late 300s, early 400s, massive migrations change things. And I've always had a really hard time wrapping my head around how entire groups of people can move and relocate thousands of miles in a generation. That happens here in the 3 and 400s AD. And it's kind of a domino effect, right? You know what a domino effect is. You hit one and then the next domino carries on. So starting in the 300s, a group of people who live north of the Black Sea called the Huns move kind of closer to the Black Sea area. And it's not like that area was open. It's not like it wasn't unoccupied. They're moving into modern-day Crimea, which is a really fertile, awesome place to live. And that place had been inhabited by a group of people known as the Visigoths. Vis meaning kind of west, so they're the Western Goths. And those folks ended up requesting permission to cross the Danube River and enter into part of what was technically Rome's empire, settle down and farm, and in return, they promised the empire that they would give them soldiers to help them fight. And if you're Rome and look at all this territory Rome's got to control and you need lots of soldiers to do it, that seems like a pretty decent back and forth, a pretty decent quid pro quo. Unfortunately, those Germanic soldiers aren't really well treated by Roman soldiers or Roman military commanders. And they end up revolting. In 378, they fight and beat a Roman army that has apparently 40,000 soldiers in it. They end up killing the emperor, a guy named Valens. And the guy who succeeds ends up ending the conflict, reintegrating these Visigoths back into the army. And one of the main differences is he allows these Visigoth troops to be commanded by a ruler or a general that is Visigoth as well. And one of those guys is a leader by the name of Alaric. So more on Alaric on the next slide.